I'm really excited about the next one. My wife and I, we adopted a couple of girls a couple of years back, 2 young girls, and bedtime stories became a big thing for me. You know, where the well things are, and there was my particular favourite just now is by an ex-writer of The Viz, John Fardell. It's called Manfred the Baddie. Has anybody read Manfred the Baddie? Well, if you've got young children, get a hold of Manfred the Baddie. It's fantastic. I was watching, I was over at the Experience Lounge, and I saw the couple of comfy armchairs and the big table, and I went and had a look in the most magnificent software that is, I think, going to be made available for early years pupils. And I'm going to introduce James Huggins, who's going to talk to us about the land of me. So next up is James Huggins. Over to you, James. Smash.
Hi there. It is somewhat disconcerting when you see pupils' proficiency with Keynote in that last session superior to my own. It's pretty worrying. Maybe the Snowballs could do some vodcasts on Keynote. That would be really helpful for me. I'm just going to switch presentations here. So the company, I'm the MD of Made in Me, and we're a brand new company. My background is visual effects and computer graphics, 3D animation, mostly for entertainment. What struck me as I was involved in that industry was the amount of really talented people creating amazing looking, really engaging, high quality content of different kinds. Generally for the purposes, and in no sense demeaning, but generally for the purposes of advertising or films that you always wished were better than they were. I thought a lot of talented people here might be interesting to explore other avenues. And when I looked to move on from that, at the same time, me and my wife had children. And I have a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, a girl and a boy. And we began experimenting with software, some of which was designed for them, and some of which was just out there in the world. And they see my passion for technology, and obviously they gravitate towards it like they do. They want to see what all the fuss is about. I started off by saying, oh, you know, the computer stuff, it's not really important. But I get comebacks like, well, why are you doing it all the time then? So I was like, okay, yes, that's good. So up on the knee, and I then struggled. I struggled to find stuff to do together. And I think for Made in Me, it was about starting a new publishing company that would look at genuinely multimedia, so not necessarily just digital stuff, but ways for you to do stuff together that involved creativity, young children. It's about communication, language, creativity, imagination, and play. And a lot of the things that obviously aren't exclusive to kids. It works for anyone who's learning. And a lot of the stuff we've seen in the last 2 sessions, and even with Gillian, amazing stuff. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice to think that my kids will end up at a school like that. Was really about looking at, from a design perspective, looking at something that was designed with that in mind. Kids could use it by themselves, but there was a role for the adult. And in the first session, there was something about finding that role where the teacher or the adult or the parent or whoever it is, the more capable peer, they don't have a role designed into it. They kind of have to find it, and there's different styles for sort of offering ideas, or why don't you try doing this? And a lot of the time, if it's an outcome, like a succeed or fail, like the physics simulation that we saw in the first session, where there's an objective and you have to do that, and so everyone's got ideas using the knowledge of physics and the way the world works to get there. And when you're with a child or someone that doesn't have that same acquired knowledge, then the process of getting there is a really interesting one for me. And it's almost what I became really interested in is not the stuff that they learn, but how they can take certain bits of information and assemble them in interesting ways. And I suppose if you've seen our little stand down in the lounge, it just looks very old. There's old armchairs, old grandfather or grandmother on the knee telling stories, and that's something that's very close to our heart. It's very much recognizing what has worked since we've been talking to each other as a species, and also looking at the new. And I think the danger is with technology and what's new is it takes on value because of its newness rather than because of its value. And I think that with me and everyone at Made in Me, we were looking at, well, let's not get carried away. There's still plenty that have real value, particularly with young kids. When you're trying to create something that has educational value, you often come out of conferences like this, or you see TED Talks, or you see things online, and you think, everything I know is wrong. And you have this sort of sense that the ground is sort of disappearing beneath your feet. And so I'm kind of here a little bit to be the voice of, no, that's really not the case. There's lots of really interesting new ways of doing things, lots of interesting new tools, but in order to make them and make them good, you still have to have a lot of knowledge that sits outside traditional knowledge, whether it's teaching knowledge, communication, storytelling, some of the most basic ways of early development for, as I say, for young kids and older people as well. This is a statement that I sort of wanted to get across, and by that I don't mean we. I'm not speaking for you. I mean we. And that was really about technology. The interesting thing about what I'm going to show you, which is something called The Land of Me. It's a suite of products or interactive applications that have been designed for a more capable child or an adult and a child to use together. And it has a very storybook, picture book type experience about it, but it goes obviously further than that with the digital side of things. And really, I suppose, looking for a way to both, on one hand, inspire, and on the other hand, facilitate or provide the tools to channel that inspiration and use it in a particular way. As if you read a picture book and you think, oh, I love these characters, I love this world, and I bet that, you know, this bug in the background, I want to know his story, and maybe there's a story to tell there, and a lot of the time you'll do that with kids with books. But we wanted something that gave you a simple set of tools, but not just the tools. It was also some of the inspiration to use them. From a technology perspective, we're not doing anything particularly new. We joke about this with the developers, where we're saying that actually, in software terms, essentially, this isn't strictly true, but essentially, you could have done this 10 years ago, what we've done. We haven't reinvented any wheels, we just used them. There's loads of really good round ones around, so we just use those. And for us, it was really looking at what we wanted to do, and then taking all of the necessary pieces, which I was prepared for to be not digital. So we want to develop a range of picture books that go hand in hand with this, not just as some sort of marketing offshoot, but genuinely as part of the early learning experience. There's a very multimedia approach to it, and I think that's really important. And I think that technology and computers have got some value to add, but I also think part of that value is about inspiring kids to go away from the computer, and that the inspiration they pick up in here can be channeled not just back into the computer, so that you don't have this relationship with lots of software, which is definitely about you and the computer. And a lot of kids stuff is about that. It's about child and computer to use in that way. The experience happens here. There might be some discussion, but it begins and ends in the computer. And we are trying to explore ways to have it. Sometimes it begins in the computer, sometimes it ends somewhere else, and vice versa. So that's been an interesting challenge. I think the innovation, as far as that is concerned, is looking at how we can piece all these together from first principles, rather than acquiring bits of software and mapping what we want to do onto that. The next thing is really the power of stories, and again, the storyteller setup that we've got downstairs really sort of tips its hat to this. It's for children, arguably the most important thing for early development, the development of language, creativity, all of the intellectual currencies that are now more highly valued than ever in a world which is constantly changing. It's more adapting and being able to reach into different buckets in your mind and put things together in interesting ways. I think the most interesting thing here, the essence of it, is stories, communication, knowledge transfer, learning about not so much things generally with stories, but learning about people, learning about emotions. And what you find is that with young kids particularly, almost everything is in the form of a story. The kids will come back from playgroup or nursery, and I'll get an account of what they've done. But it generally is in the form of an epic tale with a very sort of dramatic beginning and an end. And I'm sure that's largely due to the way I am and the way we are as parents. But it's true of any, and this is across culture. It doesn't matter where you go, what you do, stories sit, and they have such power that I think that not only they're important in their own right, but they're actually important to let children and adults in a shared context play with stories and make them up. And again, technology is perfect for being able to support this and enrich it and make it really exciting in terms of where you can go with it. The creativity thing, obviously, there's so much on creativity and what is creativity and defining it and how can we have more of it and is it necessarily good in certain contexts. This is where our real interest is. Creativity, communication, and collaboration, and it's what early years practitioners or the early years community call the 3 Cs. The nice thing about the early years as an education space, and again, this doesn't matter if you're involved in the early years or not, or whether you have kids or not, is there's so much agreement about what is good for kids in that space. And generally, it's about playing. It's about playful learning, doing things, exploring, being curious. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? And being able to use their imagination in many of the ways that that we've already seen. What's interesting to me is that you see creativity in the most incredible form with young kids. And I don't know, if you know what I'm talking about, but when the way that they think, the way that they approach things is so without all of the hardened synapses that we have as adults and the way that we think about things, the way that they'll say something and you'll laugh because it's completely nuts that they've actually associated this discussion with something else, or they've taken this idea and they've put it with something else. And what you find is this incredible courage. They're really generally not bothered about being wrong. And they just say, well, that's what I did. And whenever you see a child who's done something impressive, with me, there was a case of my 18-month-old, he's almost 2, son, unlocking my iPhone and then swiping across the pages to where I kept a couple of kiddie apps, and then going into one of them and turning it, reoriented so that the screen actually tilted the best way to see the most viewable space on the screen, and then start playing it. And I was watching this. If you were then to ask them how they figured that out, they're always so dismissive about it. They're always so, well, I just did it, really. And it's really that is something that I think as a creative person, if there's creativity involved in what you're doing and what you're teaching, it's really that. And what I'm saying is not groundbreakingly new, but it's really that sense of fearlessness about exploring, and that being the point. There is no success or fail. The point is being able to explore. And with The Land of Me, each chapter, of which there are 6 in The Land of Me, and each one is a different application, focuses on a different area of the early years curriculum, if you like, in creative terms. You've got shape, size, and color, making things, the world outside, story time, music, and dance. and that they all work as standalone applications, but they also work as a suite. And there's a whole component to what we've developed, which involves physical activities, whether they be craft activities, printing stuff out and making things with scissors and paper and glue and cutting, making masks, and definitely looking at, I suppose in this context, user-generated content as paper and physical things, and that it feels very natural to start using the computer together and then end up somewhere else, end up in the garden with masks on, end up making a diorama, but feels totally connected to what you're doing. We had a few conversations where people were saying, yeah, it's getting kids off it, which is the thing. Well, the natural progression here is to be off it and to look at how you can keep it in context with the real world. And so we created The Land of Me. We're busy working on the first two chapters, Shape, Size, and Color, and The World Outside. Shape, Size, and Color each activity involves going to a different part of the Land of Me. And if you come downstairs afterwards and have a look, we've got a map, which I'll show you in a sec, which shows you a giant world that you can explore, a storybook world, and you visit various different creatures and characters, and they all have different interests. Some are music, some is dance, some are storytellers, some like to use their imagination just for fun. And so that was really the key part of it. Recognizing that clearly the child is a member of the audience, but the adult is. As I said at the beginning, for me, it was about people say, well, there's a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, they don't really know the difference between good animation and bad animation. I mean, just draw a pig and you're done. I personally don't think that's true, but even if I accept that that's true for a second, I do know the difference. And I think that for me, it's about me being engaged and knowing how much difference that makes. And it's clear to everyone here that if you really want to engage learners, engage the teachers, that's where the focus should be. They need to be excited, they need to be engaged, they need to be having fun. Particularly with young kids, they key off that so much that you find that they are simply, it's almost like this radiating enthusiasm is through to them, and that is really what they, like I say, they key on. You get this incredible gold dust of early development in terms of dialogue, in terms of the discussions, what should we do next, what do you think about this, and a very rich experience, either in the home or in a preschool or kindergarten setting, can be had. And that is very much the focus. So if I show you, if you can see up here, this is Land of Me, and this is right in the middle of the Land of Me is the Bramble Wood, which is where our three central characters live. Eric the raccoon, Buddy Boo the bear, and Willow the owl. And over here on the right is old Granny Olive, who's the oldest known inhabitant of the Land of Me. No one knows a time before Granny Olive. And somewhat mysteriously, and deliberately so, these three different young animal characters live with an old turtle. So first and foremost, right off the bat, you've got a situation that needs some discussion. And there are always components littered throughout this where you're constantly sparking intrigue and mystery. There was a fabulous TED talk, I don't know if anyone's seen, by J.J. Abrams, who's the creator of Lost, where he was talking about the power of what you don't tell people, called the mystery box. And obviously, if anyone's seen Lost, it's pretty much founded on those principles. And even in a funny way, he says the best part of any movie generally is when the lights go down at the beginning, because it's still amazing in your mind. Most films that you go and see tends to be the then gradual disappointment that happens throughout. But for us, it was really looking at that. The way to fire the imagination and get the creative juices flowing is to put lots of question marks. Let's talk about this, let's talk about this. So within a very, very robust framework in pedagogy terms, where we had experts and early years practitioners, professors involved, we kind of set out the stage and said, okay, it has to do this, it has to operate in this way, and create this kind of interaction. But within that, we let the creative guys go nuts. And so that is very much what happened. Here you can see, you can choose any of the 6 destinations, and the characters will actually, this is the home screen, so they're generally sleeping, waiting for you. When you turn up and decide to do something, they'll spring into action and thunder off into the bushes and go and see whoever it is that you've requested you'll go see together. The environment is interactive. You can rustle the leaves, you can knock on trees, you can tap the rocks. There's bugs and lizards and all sorts of things you can dislodge from the environment. And there's always things going on in the background behind the primary game. This is the Land of Me. We're there in the middle at Bramblewood. I'm just going to show you quickly a short demonstration, which are both the first 2 chapters, which are prototypes, are running downstairs. If anyone wants to come and have a play, that would be fantastic. Up in the top right, there's a very crude geography going on here. And we go off to visit a Japanese snow monkey called Yama-san. And he likes to use his imagination just for laughs. And he wants to teach the kids the power playing Let's Pretend. Pretending to, to be something that they're not is a game we've all played, but is actually a really important part of early development, and is something that role play then takes over. And in the game itself, you're pretending to be vehicles, monsters, animals, and then a whole raft of activities that happen afterwards in terms of creating your own masks, creating wings for your stuffed animals or for you. That's where we're going to go in the short demo that I'll show you now. So maybe we can catch up some time. Yeah. I think this has sound. Is that right? Yeah. There's a very short intro here, which is very rough, but it shows will show the progression to their destination, and in very a bookish way present the character that we're going to see.
Now, little ones, you are here to play Let's Pretend, yes? Only with practice can you harness the power of your imagination.
Oh, good. I love pretending.
Who would like to play first?
So in the top right, there's hints and tips. Sometimes they're just facts about snow monkeys. Sometimes they're information about the Land of Me. Sometimes it's pedagogy in a very, very non-pedagogy type way, where it's suggesting different games, color games, ways that you can express questions in a more open-ended way, and just some really light touch technique as to how to get the most out of the activity. So I'll pick a character. It's always difficult.
Me!
Eric! Okay, young Master Eric. What do you want to pretend to be?
I want to pretend to be a monster.
A monster? Very well. Now close your eyes and imagine. What kind of monster do you want to be? One that lives on the land, in the sea, or the air?
In the sea.
Okay, very good. Now, what size do you want to pretend to be? Big, medium, or small?
Medium.
Excellent. Now, do you want to be yellow, like the sun? Blue, like the sea? Or as pink as the cherry blossom tree?
So what's important here is the use of symbols in a big key area. What they're doing is with every subsequent choice, clearly they're building, essentially they're building a sentence describing something. It's in a form of abstract symbols, which is just a slightly simpler version of an actual sentence. As I made the choices, stuff happens if you don't do anything. The world continues. If you see with my mouse, I can irritate the monkeys.
Hold down 7 times. Stand.
Oh. Pink.
Look, you are magnificent.
Eric, you look bonkers.
So just quickly to finish off,
Can you wriggle your
what happens is not teaching the kids how to read. The
How-
language at the top is simply about them understanding that there are just a little bit more complicated symbol system that's going on all around them all the time, called words, and that they then see the power of words with the adult or someone who can read going in and manipulating this text in the same ways they just created it from symbols. It can be manipulated. So, for example, and you can use any synonym here for size. So I could say huge, if I typed it correctly. I can change the color if I want. Again, I might not be happy with the big scary one, and I prefer something based on, it even has, pretty sure it even has we for small. Yes, it does. There's always ways to interact with the creatures, and even change the type of creature. Or actually, no, I fancy being a land monster instead, and making them do various things. And so in this way, it feels like almost like my first ever creative application. And again, up in the top right, in this section up here, is a way to print out, not just print out what you've done, but to print out activities that complement what you've created, as well as name it, if you want to name the animal.
Would you like to play
it's
again,
then
my
saved
friend?
as that name. You can create a family, create a bigger one that's daddy, and then print those out and create a collage. So in this way, we sort of felt that it sat nicely within a physical activity setting where there were different things to do, dressing up, making masks, cutting and gluing. The computer sat more comfortably there than it does at the moment in a lot of cases, where you see it very much as its own thing in the corner of the room. You go and do computer time, then you come back to the real world, and we're doing lots of interesting things. And it's hooking all of that together in a more meaningful way. So do come down and chat to us. We'll be around. Thank you.
Folks, I would thoroughly recommend going to have a seat in one of the comfy armchairs in the Made in Me area, but even more, have a look at is it 2 chapters you've got? It's just the 1 chapter at the minute?
There is 2 chapters. The other chapter is a little bit rougher, but it's still, you can have a play with it downstairs.
Okay. Folks, listen, we have overrun quite a bit.